The old mansion loomed at the edge of the countryside, its windows staring blankly like hollow eyes. The Addams family thought they had found their dream home, a sprawling estate with ivy crawling up its stone walls, purchased at a price too good to refuse. Thomas, the father, joked that they had robbed the cellars. His wife, Claire, only smiled, though unease prickled the back of her neck. Their daughter, Emily, was the first to wander through the halls. She was 10, with a curious streak that often led her into trouble. While her parents unpacked boxes, Emily explored, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous rooms. She counted 12 doors upstairs, each leading to dusty bedrooms or storage spaces, until she noticed something strange. The hallway wall bulged slightly, uneven against the smooth plaster. Running her hand across it, Emily felt a faint draft. "Daddy," she called, but her father brushed it off as just old housequirks. That night, Emily dreamed of laughter. Children's laughter, faint and hollow, echoing through the corridors. When she woke, she was certain it had come from inside the wall. By the third day, Claire grew tired of Emily's insistence. To settle the matter, Thomas fetched a hammer and began tapping at the wall. The sound rang hollow. He exchanged a nervous glance with Claire before striking harder. The plaster cracked, crumbling away to reveal a hidden wooden door, locked tight with a rusted padlock. "See?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide. "I told you there was something there." They debated whether to open it. Thomas argued it was just storage. Claire's unease deepened, her instincts telling her to leave it alone. But curiosity, and Emily's pleading, won out. The lock broke easily under Thomas's crowbar. The door groaned open, releasing a stale, suffocating air that smelled of rotten dust. Inside was a small, windowless room. At first glance, it seemed like a child's playroom. Tiny chairs sat around a low wooden table. Dolls, their glass eyes dull with age, were propped neatly against the walls. A rocking horse rested in the corner, its paint chipped. But everything was coated in dark, dried stains. Brown smears streaked the floorboards. The toys were splattered with something that looked like blood. Claire clutched Emily close, whispering, "We shouldn't be in here." From the far corner, one of the dolls slowly tipped over on its own. The air inside the hidden room was colder than the rest of the house, biting against their skin like an unseen draft. Emily squirmed in her mother's arms, her eyes fixed on the toppled doll. "Maybe a rat knocked it over," Thomas muttered, though his voice carried little conviction. He stepped inside, boots crunching on old plaster fragments. The floor groaned with his weight, the sound unnervingly similar to a sigh. Claire refused to cross the threshold, but Emily wriggled free and followed her father. Her small hand brushed against the table, leaving streaks in the dusty surface. She smiled faintly, as though she belonged there. Thomas inspected the walls, noting faint carvings scratched into the wood. Circles, tally marks, and crude childlike drawings. "Looks like someone lived here." His words trailed off as he found a set of initials burned into the corner beam, EA. Emily touched them with her fingertips. "That's my name," she whispered. Claire's heart thudded. "We're leaving now." But Thomas shook his head. "It's just coincidence. Besides, this could add value to the house, hidden history, maybe even worth something." That night, sleep was restless. Claire kept waking, convinced she heard faint scuffling in the walls, like little feet dragging across the wood. She nudged Thomas, but he snored deeply, undisturbed. Emily, however, whispered in her sleep, her lips moving silently as if holding a conversation. In the morning, Claire entered her daughter's room to find all of Emily's toys rearranged in a perfect circle around her bed. None of them had been like that the night before. "Emily, did you do this?" Her daughter blinked innocently. "They wanted to play. They said it was lonely in there." Claire froze. "Who said that?" Emily smiled faintly. "The children in the room." Later that day, Thomas returned to the hidden chamber, determined to prove his wife wrong. He set up a work lamp and snapped photos for documentation. But when he compared the shots on his phone, his breath caught. In the photographs, the dolls weren't sitting where he remembered. They were facing him, every glass eye locked directly on his camera. From the hallway, Claire heard the faint sound of children laughing. By the end of the week, the mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt alive, breathing, watching. Claire couldn't shake the sensation of being followed. Whenever she passed a mirror, she swore she caught movement, a small figure darting behind her shoulder. At night, she'd find Emily awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, whispering into the dark as if answering unseen questions. "Emily, honey, who are you talking to?" Claire asked one evening, trying to keep her voice calm. Emily turned, her face pale in the moonlight. "The other kids. They say you shouldn't be scared, Mommy. They just want me to play forever." Claire's stomach turned cold. Thomas, on the other hand, remained stubborn. He spent hours in the hidden playroom, cataloging the dolls, rocking horse, and toys. He even convinced himself the strange markings on the walls were just childish graffiti. "It's history," he said. "We're living in a piece of the past. Nothing more." But on the seventh night, Thomas awoke to the sound of wood creaking. Not from above, not from below, directly beside the bed. He reached for the lamp and froze. Standing there, half in shadow, was one of the dolls. The same cracked porcelain face, the same blood-stained dress. It was perched neatly on his nightstand, its glass eyes reflecting the dim light. Thomas jolted upright, nearly knocking the lamp over. Claire stirred, gasping when she saw it. How did that get here?" she stammered. Emily appeared at the doorway, sleepy-eyed, clutching another doll. "They don't like being locked up anymore," she murmured. The next day, Claire demanded they leave the house, but Thomas refused. "We can't just abandon everything. There's a logical explanation." Still, Claire packed a bag for Emily, just in case. She returned to the hallway to find her daughter gone. Panic surged through her chest. She called out, her voice echoing through the halls, but there was no reply. Finally, she heard a faint giggle, the sound of children at play. It drifted from behind the hidden door. Claire pushed it open and stepped inside. Emily sat in the center of the room, surrounded by dolls, her hands clasped tightly with two empty rocking chairs. The chairs rocked steadily back and forth, though no one sat in them. Emily looked up at her mother and whispered, almost apologetic, "They don't want me to leave." Claire dragged Emily out of the hidden room, slamming the door behind them. Her hands trembled as she locked it with a chain she'd found in the garage. "You are never going back in there," she hissed, clutching her daughter tightly. Emily didn't protest. She only stared at the closed door, her expression distant, as though listening to something Claire couldn't hear. That night, Claire tried to sleep with Emily in her bed. But around midnight, the little girl stirred, her lips moving in a hushed murmur. "They're calling me," she whispered. "They're lonely. They're cold." Claire pressed her hands over her daughter's ears. "No one's calling you, baby. It's just dreams." But then, something answered. A faint chorus of children's voices drifted through the walls, giggling, singing in cracked tones, "Come back and play, Emily." The house seemed to breathe with the words. Thomas refused to believe it. "It's the wind. Old houses do that. You're scaring her with this nonsense." But his confidence shattered the following evening. As he reviewed the photos he'd taken in the playroom, one image nearly stopped his heart. Behind Emily, smiling at the dolls, stood a row of shadowy children. Their faces were blurred, their bodies faded, but their eyes gleamed like wet glass. Thomas dropped the phone. "Claire, we need to leave." They tried. The next morning, they loaded Emily into the car, but the engine refused to start. The battery was drained, though it had been fine the day before. When Thomas ran back inside to grab his tools, the front door slammed shut on its own, locking him out. Claire screamed from inside as Emily vanished again. Thomas kicked his way through the back door, splintering the frame. He found Claire sobbing in the hallway, pointing toward the upstairs. "She's back in the room." Together, they rushed to the locked door only to find the chain broken, the padlock twisted open as if by invisible hands. Inside, Emily sat once more on the floor, her face pale, her eyes dark-rimmed. The dolls circled around her, their tiny heads turning toward her parents in unison. Emily's voice was no longer her own. It was layered, dozens of tones speaking as one. She belongs to us now. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own as Thomas and Claire staggered back from the room. The house no longer felt like timber and stone, it felt like flesh, breathing and shifting around them. Every window was dark, the outside world swallowed by shadows. Claire clung to Thomas. "We have to get her out. If we leave her, we'll lose her forever." But when Thomas tried to step forward, the floorboards snapped like jaws. A jagged crack opened between him and the room, deep and black, as though the house itself was warning him away. He barely managed to stumble back before the floor closed again, sealing without a trace. From inside the room, Emily's voice drifted out, sweet and distant. "Mommy, Daddy, come play with us." Claire's tears blurred her vision. "Emily, please, fight them." The dolls answered instead. Their laughter echoed in the hallway, high-pitched and cruel. One by one, they began appearing throughout the house. On the stairs, on the mantel, on the kitchen counters, always facing the parents with unblinking eyes. No matter how many Thomas smashed, new ones appeared, whole and smiling. At midnight, the house shifted again. Doors slammed shut. The front door vanished entirely, replaced by solid wall. The windows showed nothing but a swirling black void. They were trapped. Claire collapsed against the wall, trembling. "It doesn't want us to leave." It never did. Thomas pulled her up, his face pale but determined. "Then we take her back. We burn this place down if we have to." They crept upstairs, every step groaning under their weight. At the end of the hallway, the hidden door was wide open, light spilling out in a sickly glow. Inside, Emily stood, her small hands clasped with invisible companions. The rocking horse moved on its own, creaking back and forth, while the walls pulsed with strange symbols glowing faintly in the dark. Claire reached for her daughter, but the moment her hand crossed the threshold, a force slammed her back. She hit the floor, gasping, as Emily turned toward them with hollow eyes. "You can't take me," she said in a dozen voices at once. "The house has already chosen." The dolls turned their heads together, grinning, as the door began to close. Thomas threw himself at the door as it began to shut, his shoulders slamming against the wood with a force that rattled his bones. The frame shuddered but held. From inside, Emily watched him with those hollow, glassy eyes, her expression distant and wrong. "Emily!" Claire screamed, scrambling to her feet. "Baby, please, come back to us." But Emily only tilted her head, smiling faintly. "I'm not alone anymore, Mommy. I don't need you." Behind her, the dolls stirred. Their tiny limbs twitched, their heads jerking unnaturally as they shuffled closer to Emily in a grotesque parody of protection. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, the sickly light bleeding into the hall. Thomas grabbed the crowbar he'd used to open the room days before. "If this house wants a fight," he muttered through gritted teeth, "then it'll get one." He swung hard, the metal smashing against the doorframe. Sparks burst where the crowbar met the wood, as though he'd struck something alive. The house groaned in fury, the walls trembling. From somewhere deep below, a chorus of children's voices rose in unison, "She belongs to us, forever." The floor buckled. Cracks tore through the hallway, widening into gaping holes that breathed darkness. Claire clung to the wall, screaming as the ground tried to swallow her. Thomas swung again, and this time the door burst open with a deafening crack. The room exploded with light. Claire shielded her eyes, stumbling inside. The air was suffocating, heavy with rot and dust, but she forced her way forward. Emily stood in the center, her small frame trembling, her hands clasped with invisible figures. As Claire drew closer, the shadows of children materialized, pale, eyeless, whispering things in tongues she couldn't understand. Claire fell to her knees, reaching out. Emily, listen to me. They're not your friends. They're not children anymore, they're prisoners. Don't let them keep you here. Emily's lip quivered. For a moment, her real eyes flickered through the glassy veil. They said, they'll love me forever. They'll consume you, Thomas shouted from the doorway, swinging the crowbar at one of the dolls. Porcelain shattered, and the children's chorus wailed in pain. The dolls staggered, their connection faltering. Claire seized the moment. She crawled across the blood-stained floor, pulling Emily into her arms. The child resisted at first, thrashing, her voice layered with dozens of screams. But Claire clutched her tightly, rocking her. "You are my daughter," she whispered through tears. "Not theirs. Not the house's. Mine. And I will never let you go." The shadows shrieked. The walls bled fresh cracks as the glowing symbols burned hotter, threatening to engulf them all. Emily screamed, her body convulsing in Claire's grip. For a terrifying moment, Claire thought she was losing her. Then Emily collapsed against her chest, sobbing like the frightened little girl she was. The chorus broke, replaced by an ear-splitting wail that shook the foundation of the mansion. Thomas grabbed them both. "We have to end this now." He smashed the crowbar into the symbols carved into the wall. With each blow, the room screamed louder. Dolls burst like brittle shells, spewing dust. The rocking horse split in two. The final strike tore through the largest symbol. The room erupted in blinding white light. And then, silence. When the light faded, the hidden room was gone. The wall was whole again, seamless plaster where the door had been. No toys, no dolls, no symbols, nothing remained. Thomas, Claire, and Emily lay in the hallway, coughing and trembling. The house was still at last, its oppressive weight lifted. Days later, they abandoned the mansion, leaving everything behind. They never looked back, not even once. Emily barely spoke for weeks, but when she finally did, her words chilled Claire's blood. "They're not gone," Emily whispered one night, eyes wide and unblinking. "They're waiting in another room."